computer. Okay. So I want to thank the UVA Parents Fund and also the donors to Theological Horizons. They are providing your lunch for you today. And of course, normally we would be right outside in my backyard. I can see it, the garden at the Bonhoeffer House where we were last week by the fire pit. So fun. And I really hope that we'll be back there again. But for today, we're together the best way that we can be. And again, I just hope that you'll relax, enjoy, listen, rest. What we're going to do today as we gather is I am going to share with you the story of Hildegard von Bingen, who, I don't know if you've ever heard of her. It's just a wild story and fascinating woman. She was born in 1098. So it's kind of a chance for you to get out of your current moment and go way, way back. I want to say too that next week we're going to tell the story and do a reading from W.E.B. Du Bois, who was again an amazing person who in the year 1903 said that the problem in America is the problem of the color line. And I think that all of his writings about race and America are fascinating and still so relevant today. So hope you'll come back for that. I think we'll be virtual. I know we'll be virtual again. So hopefully we can do this whole Grubhub thing all over again and gather that way next Friday at 12 and at 1. So hope you'll come back. Okay, our theme is signs of life. This is what kind of we're looking for right now. I'm looking out the window. I don't know about you, if you have a window, at the snow, at the drippy trees. And I want to tell you about Hildegard von Bingen because she lived in southern Germany where it is really cold right now, much colder than here, I'm sure, and was born in 1098 when Grubhub did not exist and probably heat did not exist. They had fires, but it was a really different time. But I think that her story and her life hopefully will bring some inspiration and encouragement and joy to us. So I'm going to test my technological skills to show you a 2-minute clip from a film called Vision. It's a German movie that I really love. It's in subtitles, so don't panic. But it's cool, and I recommend it to you if you have time. This weekend or whenever to even watch it. So let me share my screen and I will show it to you. Share sound. Here we go. All right, so check this out. Can you see it?
Tut Buße! Werft euch nieder und erwartet in Stille den Herrn.
Es ist unser göttliches Recht, dass wir über uns selbst bestimmen.
Zügle deine Zunge, Hildegard.
Meine Tochter hat von deinem Ruf gehört. Sie möchte in deine Klause eintreten und von dir unterwiesen werden. Wir leben hier in einer Gemeinschaft. Wir essen zusammen, wir arbeiten zusammen, wir schweigen zusammen. Der Mensch ist aus Erde geschaffen und die Erde wird dir helfen. Ich habe Dinge gesehen, die andere Menschen nicht gesehen haben. Ich hörte eine Stimme sagen.
Dann musst du dieser Stimme folgen.
Und wenn ihre Gesichter Teufelswerk wären?
Du hast behauptet, Botschaften von Gott zu empfangen.
Wie das geschieht, ist schwer zu verstehen.
Willst du damit sagen, dass wir es nicht verstehen können?
Der Teufel soll dich holen.
Ich werde mich dafür einsetzen, dass du exkommuniziert wirst.
Ich kann dich zerstören.
Ich muss es wagen. Ich würde seinem Befehl nicht folgen. Eile, mein Gott, mich zu erretten. Herr, mir zu helfen.
Okay, could you see that and hear that? Yeah, great. Oh, hold on. All right. Well, just to throw you right into her life, this is a different time, a different place, a different era. But I think as we hear her story and read her words, I think that you will find for yourself a connection with Hildegard's story. She was born in 1098. Hildegard was born to an aristocratic German family. She was the 10th child. And I don't know how many of you grew up in the church, but there's this idea of tithe, that one gives a tenth of one's wealth to the church, to the work of God, to the kingdom. And her family, in a custom that was not unusual then, gave her, their 10th child, to the church, literally, as a gift. And she was only 8 years old, and they brought her to the monastery. And in a practice that sounds very strange and actually, to me, very cruel, she was donated to the church. And her parents entrusted her to Jutta, who was an older nun, was a nun called an anchoress. And an anchoress was a person who lived in an enclosure at the monastery. And so Hildegard was given to Jutta to live in this enclosure with her and be her apprentice, her support. And they literally did this service, and it was the funeral service, as they put this little girl into the cell with this older woman to serve and to pray and to accompany her. And so Hildegard lived in this enclosure until she was 38 years old when Jutta died, which I don't know, that is just so extraordinary to me. But she did receive an education there with Jutta. She learned the prayers. She learned actually quite a lot. And when Jutta died, Hildegard, who had been serving quietly in this hierarchical society, she had taken her place, had been given by her parents, was under the control of the church. She had a different vision of what her life should be. She had a vision of what God was calling her to do. And this vision came out of some really strange experiences that she had had since she was just a little girl. Now, she was very sickly. She was prone to migraines, very serious migraine headaches. And some scholars say that her visions were related to her migraines, but she had visions. She had this inner gift in which she saw God, she saw the world, she saw just incredible sights in her mind. And she, in her visions, came to see God as good and generous, as creative, as an artist of lightness and greenness. She saw visions of the whole universe, the whole cosmos bursting with color. And even from that clip, I think you get a sense of the time, which was that God was a God of fear and punishment and darkness. But for Hildegard, in her visions, she saw God as a good and a beautiful, artistic, creative creator God. She described one of her visions in this way. She said, "A fiery light, flashing intensely, came from the open vault of heaven and poured through my whole brain like a flame that is hot without burning. It kindled all my heart and all my breast. Suddenly, I could understand." And so Hildegard came to see herself as someone with gifts that she wanted to return to God and to the world. And so she had this incredible stubbornness too. So she decided that God was calling her to organize, to build, to heal, to create, to understand, and to shape a woman's community of shelter and care for others. So Hildegard emerged from her cell within the monastery. She negotiated her release, basically. And women came to this monastery, which was run by men. It was a double monastery, so there were men and there were women. They came to live with her, surround her in this community of faith in God and service to God and a longing to pray. But that was not enough for Hildegard. So she decided and had a call to leave this double monastery with these women and go out and form their own community on their own as women alone. It took a lot of work to get the men who had control of their dowries, their money, of course, from these women would donate, the families would donate their money to the monastery to release them. But Hildegard was very stubborn. In fact, they say that when she asked for something and if she was told no, she would have these sort of fits and like visions and fall down and pass out. And everyone would think like she was dead or she was in a coma. And then finally she would get her way and she would like wake up. She'd be like, okay, let's go. So I don't know, a little complexity there. But anyway, she emerged from her cell. She met these women. They came, they left the protection of the men. And in a real act of courage, they left to build an abbey, to build a church and a community by the Rhine River there in Germany. So Hildegard lived for 43 more years. She lived into her 80s, which is extraordinary for that time. We're talking about the 11th century or the 12th century. Her ministry exploded. These visions that she had had as a child and kept to herself, she began to tell them. And they were illustrated and shared. And we will see at the end of this hour some of the drawings that were made, the paintings of these visions. Pilgrims would come to the monastery because they had heard about her visions. They had heard about her healing powers. And I don't mean necessarily miraculous healing powers, but in fact, she knew a great deal about plants and nutrition and medicine. And she wrote a book called Causes and Cures. She wrote a book all about the different plants. And I thought it was interesting, in the last couple of years, some scientists went back and did a sort of a survey of her different recommendations, her prescriptions, her health recommendations, and found that the statistics showed that she was way above average in getting them right. So that as she was recommending, use this plant for this ailment and this plant for that ailment, or try heat, or all these different strategies for curing people, that in fact she was really on to much of the medical knowledge that we know today. So she trained the nuns in her abbey, all the ways of healing. And of course, there were no hospitals in that day. Peasants and people would come to these religious communities for healings. So Hildegard taught the healing, and she taught about nutrition. You can go online. There's a website called Healthy Hildegard, and there are recipes there inspired by her. I'm going to try to put them in the chat in a little bit. So there's one that I saw today called a grapefruit smoothie. And I was like, I don't really see Hildegard making smoothies, but it was based on her recommendations of bitterness and the health benefits of bitterness. But anyway, even today in Germany, you can eat Hildegard bread, which has a lot of spelt in it, which is a kind of wheat. Another sort of emphasis for Hildegard was art. She wrote poetry, she wrote chant, and the nuns chanted her poems, her scriptures, her visions every day. And even today in the Abbey, you can hear the nuns chanting. And I've been there. It's super cool to hear them in the church singing her music. She had not been taught kind of the elite education of chant writing and singing of the time. So musicians and science scholars are stunned by the beauty of her work and sort of the inspiration and the intelligence of her compositions. So she had this powerful, fiery energy that was contagious. She was stubborn, she was energetic. And in her dark time and place, in her anchor hold, and I think of course of you all kind of locked into your spot as we are now, that she, even as a limited person, under the control of circumstances and of people, she celebrated God's goodness, and she discovered all of her gifts and shared and cared for other people. So that's a little bit about Hildegard's story. She served people. She was awesome. I love her story. And I'm gonna look for the reading here for you. You don't have to read along with us, but you can if you want to. For those of you who have come with us before, we always have a reading, a PDF reading, but I'm going to read it with you so you can just relax if you want to download it for later. It's also at the theologicalhorizons.org website under Vintage Lunches. You can see all the readings there. So this, as we begin, I am going to read this passage for you from a book called Hildegard von Bingen, Doctor of the Church, A Spiritual Reader by Carmen Butcher Acevedo. And I would invite you as you're listening to make use of the chat. If you have a comment, if you have a word, if you have a question, if you have a thought or feeling, please just share those along the way. So this first section is not her words, but the author, Carmen, introduces, I think, some really interesting things about Hildegard's writings and her theology and her concepts of God. Okay, are you ready? Good. With all that Hildegard accomplished in her 8 decades, the arduous preaching tours, the multiple manuscripts, the founding of monasteries, the successful management of her communities, the personal care given to their more than 100 monastic members, and her work as apothecary, dietitian, naturalist, exorcist, musician, poet, letter writer, and composer, it is hard to believe that she was often so sick. But Hildegard was frequently, quite literally, stuck in bed, unable to move. Her symptoms suggest that she suffered from migraines, excruciatingly painful, mystifying maladies. Hildegard must have found a way to tap into the well of holy joy. She defines joy as an awareness of God's secrets. But how can we be conscious of divine secrets? Can we see God? Her answer is synonymous with Psalm 19, that we can see God's vigor in the world around us. And here are the words from Psalm 19. The heavens are telling the glory of God. The firmament proclaims God's handiwork. Day to day pours forth speech, and night to night declares knowledge. There is no speech, nor are there words. Their voice is not heard, yet their voice goes out through all the earth, and their words to the end of the world. Hildegard called this vigor viriditas, the green energy of agape love pulsing through the entire universe. She coined this Latin word in her own unique, creative way. She chooses viriditas to express God's vitality and the way God's goodness and love charge the whole world with life, beauty, and renewal, literally with greenness. In Hildegard's mind, viriditas is found first in the green of the Garden of Eden, but it is also the green of whatever twig you or I happen to be looking at in this present moment, whoever we are, wherever we may be. She knew that the natural opposite of this greening energy was spiritual desiccation or spiritual depression. But like God's mercy, God's revitalizing viriditas has no limits. Wherever Hildegard looked, she saw that this green force animates every creature and plant on this planet with verdant divine love. After an indefinite, seeming frozen time, nothing can be more exciting than spring. Hildegard lived through countless dramatic German winters and knew this knowledge in her very bones. Finally, these words. She saw flowers, literally the most reproductive form of natural plant growth, as the height of viriditas. After the bitterest winter, they felt like a gift. To her, they symbolized, in a mysterious way, our obedience to God, and she saw God's crucified, incarnate Son as the best example of the flower. Okay, let's pause And I'd love for you to add in the chat your favorite flower and why. What is your favorite flower and why? Doesn't have to be a big reason. Forget me not. Oh, Anne of Green Gables. Thanks, Jen. Dandelion, because they are goofy looking but whimsical. Thank you. Oh, and forget me not is blue. Lily of the Valley, my name. We had them outside my house. Oh, it's not basic. Roses. Granny has rose bushes. I love it. Daffodils. Very happy. Yeah. I've seen them on our street already. They're under the snow now. Other flowers. Daisies. They are simple and pretty. Hydrangeas, because they are unique. Yeah. Well, I wish we had all these baby's breath sunflowers. Oh, so great. Wisteria reminds you of spring. Nice. Oh, Nan likes baby's breath because the name is cute. Well, thank you for sharing your flowers. Hayden, what's yours? I didn't see yours in there. Did I miss it?
Yeah, I said sunflowers because I like rom-coms, and there's so many like good rom-com scenes that like have like the girl and the guy like sitting in a flower bed of like sunflowers. And I always think it's so cool.
Great. Oh, I'm glad I didn't miss that. That's awesome.
What's your favorite flower?
Oh, my favorite flower. I did think of daffodils, I think, just because that's the first flower that you see. And I also like those little crocuses that you see just in the grass, you know, at the end of winter. So start to look for those. Wonderful. Well, that's an introduction to some of her ideas in this idea of viriditas. Let me write that for you. Viriditas, which again was a Latin word that she kind of created and used in a very particular way. Before we leave today, I'm going to play some of her music for you, and we're also going to see some images of her vision. So these next words are poems that she wrote. They're lyrics that were set to music. So the next part of our reading are words from Hildegard. She says this: looking at the clear sky, I heard many different kinds of music in it, expressing every meaning I'd ever heard in my visions. I listened to the happiness of those in heaven praising the Creator. I also heard them singing sad songs, telling those who'd forgotten God to praise God. And I listened to the virtues, giving encouragement and advice. The singers made sweet music like this. And this is one of her songs. And this is a song for Mary, the mother of Jesus. Mary, whatever's small and unnoticed is like you, growing, the greenest twig, stirring in the rainy gusts that were all those questions asked by those who lived before your time and spent their lives looking for God's Son to come. The sunshine warmed you, and when the time was ripe, you blossomed, smelling like balsam, and the fragrance of your bloom renewed the spice's dry perfume. The earth rejoiced when your body grew spelt, and spelt is that German hard wheat. The sky celebrated by giving the grass dew, and the birds built nests in your wheat, and the food of the Eucharist was made for all humanity. We feast on it full of joy. Kind lady, no wonder you're always happy. Eve scorned these things, but we praise our God on high. So as you heard these words, what did you hear, or maybe you saw kind of an image in your mind? Would you be willing to share any word or phrase or image that came to you, either out loud or in the chat?
I really like the part where the food of the Eucharist was like made for all humanity.
Mhm. Yeah. And this Eucharist being communion, the meal in which we remember Christ in a Christian tradition. Yeah. Kind lady, no wonder you're always happy. Mm. How did you feel when you heard these words? Were there any feelings or emotions that came up? Wonder. Peace. Well, let's read another. I'll read you another one of her poems that were set to music. You're the word of our Father, the light of the first sunrise, God's omnipotent thought. Before anything was made, you saw it, you designed it, and you tucked your all-seeing nature in the middle of your sinew, like a spinning wheel with no beginning and no end, still encircling everything. So this poem, she's speaking to Jesus Christ, and there's the idea, the image of a sunrise here. So I'm going to read it to you again, and I would like for you, as you listen, to just maybe let your mind go to images of a sunrise, okay? You are the word of our Father, the light of the first sunrise, God's omnipotent thought. Before anything was made, you saw it, you designed it, and you tucked your all-seeing nature in the middle of your sinew, like a spinning wheel with no beginning and no end, still encircling everything. Okay. Another word. The closed holy gate opens today to show us the way to receive all that the serpent had locked up in woman. Come on through. How? In the garden over there, do you see the flower of Mary shining in the dawn? Now this little poem, I think, has a lot of symbols and sort of religious ideas in here that if you're not familiar with the Christian tradition or sort of the images of her time, it just sounds, it just doesn't make sense. So I'm going to read it again, and then I'm curious to know if you're hearing any Christian symbols or any symbols at all that just sort of make sense or help you understand what this is about. This is not a quiz, but I'm curious to know what you hear. Okay, you ready again? The closed holy gate opens today to show us the way to receive all the serpent had locked up in woman. Come on through now. How? In the garden over there, do you see the flower of Mary shining in the dawn? Okay. What are you hearing? Anybody willing to speak to this? Just give us whatever ideas are coming up for you.
I'm hearing a theme of release, just because like the things are locked out, but then kind of like new life.
Thank you.
Thanks. I'm thinking of like the Garden of Eden and how the people like Adam and Eve were like cast out of it, and there was like someone guarding it. And like the snake reminds me of that too. And kind of how like Mary is kind of like seeming like the new like woman, kind of like with the coming of Christ, foiled to Eve. I don't know.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
Is it talking about salvation, like the separation between like sinfulness and like a broken world and divinity, like the closed holy gate opens today, like with Christ's birth, the flower of Mary? I could be reading this really incorrectly, but it's like all of that divinity was locked away when the serpent deceived Eve, arguably, and Adam. So that's where I'm a little confused. But then it's like, come on through now. Like you can come back to divinity, back to heaven through Jesus. How are you going to come back? The flower of Mary. I don't know if that was the right interpretation, but
Well, I think that's what we're doing here. We're just guessing. We're just playing with this. And this is something that these are words that coming from us from, more than 1,000 years, right? But I love that this poetry and these ideas about God are for us today to bring into our lives and to think about. So I'm all about guessing and creating and thinking. But to me, Lily, you made good sense of it to me. And I think, again, we see this image of the flower of Mary as Christ. Well, in the reading that I shared with you in the file, and again, it's online, there's a lot more, but I want to take some time to show you some images. These are illustrations, paintings that were done by Hildegard's assistant, I think it was by another nun, illustrating what she had seen, and also to hear some recordings of her chant. So I would just invite you to relax. Again, this is a time for you to feel nurtured and to sort of feel for those signs of life that are coming back in this winter that we're in right now. Again, you can envision the sunrise as Hayden does. He says it reminds him of how the rising of the sun in the morning, how light starts to touch everything, and we are able to truly see everything. So I will share my screen with you and play some music, and we'll look at these images together. Let's see. Oops. So any responses? What did you see? What did you hear?
I think something really cool that I saw was one of the tapestries. I would say, there was like a blue, like Jesus, and I'm pretty sure Jesus depicted in blue, and he had this like a light yellow circle, and then kind of like these light waves coming around him. I thought that was really cool, and I think the word that came to mind when I was looking at it was imminence, or eminence, and just how like I think like all powerful and just like radiating royalty. And then while looking at the other tapestries, I saw that I think that symbol of like the golden inner circle, but then the lighter outer circle is a depiction of God. I saw it, I think, used in the sky a lot more through the other tapestries. So I think like that tapestry was really symbolizing Jesus in God and how he's a part of the Trinity and like that unity with God.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
For me, I saw a lot of the circular shapes and thinking about the poem talking about the sunrise and like God's omnipotence, and like infinity and God's like eternal nature can sometimes be scary to me. That's just a really long time, and that's a lot of information to think about. But I thought it was really a beautiful representation of that.
Thank you, Isabella. I'm sending you a file of those images so that you can see them or keep them if you like. What do you think is Lillian? I look at your name on your thing. What do you want to say, Lily?
I just had a quick question about one of the photos.
Okay.
Not saying there's not way more to unpack in all of them,
Sure.
but there was one where it was like a circle and there was a golden person coming up, and then there was like a patch of, I'm not going to describe this well with my hands, but it was like a patch of like darkness with like stars almost, and there was a man with white hair and a white beard, and then there was a sun and like a flower, and someone was like smelling the flower, which I took to be like humanity, and then like God inspiring like what she was talking about, like vigor into the earth for people to appreciate. But I didn't know who the middle figure was because Jesus never lived to have white hair or anything. But maybe that's me being just confused. Maybe it's like, I don't know, if y'all had any insight into that image, that'd be much appreciated.
You're being curious, which is good. That's what we want. Well, I will take some time, Lily, this week and look, because I have a book of all those images, and see if I can find a little narrative about that. So good question. And now you have the picture yourself, so you can develop your own interpretations. Any other thoughts about what you heard or what you saw, Chloe?
I don't know, Lily, what it means, but I was thinking that maybe the person with the beard was like humanity or like Adam, because he's like in the dirt, and like Adam was created out of like dust and dirt, I guess. I don't know.
And you know, Hildegard even says when she was seeing these visions, like she didn't even always know what they were. You know, I mean, they came to her not fully interpreted, but just as experiences. And she does say in that description that she, you know, she understood. But I think there's so much mystery here, and there's so much, I think for us, like we're so driven to understand and interpret and have the right meaning and to get clarity. Whereas there's also this whole experience of life that is mystery, you know, that the experience of the spirit, hi, Zoe's in our next group. So you're here in the end of this, you know, that this is the way she experienced the world, and that the way that she knew God. And it might be different from the way that we think of God or the way that we experience God, but in her own way, she did. And she teaches us too. She invites us into this different way of experiencing God and of experiencing the world, which is why I love these stories so much, because these different people who lived over so many different centuries knew God, experienced God, thought of God in really beautiful and varied ways. And it gives us a lot of room, I think, to think about God and to think about the world and to think about life in the spirit. Gives us a lot of freedom to be curious, right? Well, as we go, I'd like to read for you one final poem of Hildegard's. And before we do that, I'm just curious to know if any of you have a thought about how Hildegard's story and your story connect or resonate in any way, or even how she is a person and you as a person resonate or connect. It's a big question, but I want to ask it to at least leave you thinking with that. But anybody want to say a word about that if you're thinking of anything now?
I was just thinking of the ways that she's a woman and she was in ministry, and just how we still as women in ministry have to carve a path and like be heard and be listened to. So that's what I was thinking about when I heard her story.
Yeah. Thank you, Salam. And you'll see in the reading, if you were able to get the text, like some of the letters that she wrote to the emperors and to the kings, and she would call them out, but she would always also say, I'm just a poor woman, but like God told me this, so I'm telling you. So, and she went on, she was the first woman to preach publicly in her time. So she went on some preaching tours at like age 80. So yeah, so she's a great example. Thank you for that. Natalie, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think her being in isolation for so much of her life, and then finding beauty and appreciation in nature, especially, and seeing God through that. I feel like that's something that's really resonated with me recently, because I think like in this time being inside all the time, like I've come to really appreciate my time outside and fresh air and the beauty of God's work outside. So
yeah, thank you for that. Well, yeah, I think let's all take a walk, because we're allowed to do that, right? And look for twigs, look for signs of life, look for green out in the world. So as other people are coming in, and as our group is ending, I'd like to read these words to you, a song of Hildegard, and then I'll close with our blessing, okay? Spirit of fire, Paraclete, Holy Spirit, our comforter. You're the live in alive, the bee in every creature's being, the breathe in every breath on earth, doctor of the desperate, healer of everyone broken past hope, medicine for all wounds, fire of love, joy of hearts, fragrant strength, sparkling fountain, protector, penetrator. In you, we contemplate how God goes looking for those who are lost and reconciles those who are at odds with him. Break our chains. You bring people together. You curl clouds. You whirl winds. Send rain on rocks, sing in creeks, and turn the lush earth green. You teach those who listen, breathing joy and wisdom into them. We praise you for these gifts. Light giver, sound of joy, wonder of being alive, hope of every person, and our strongest good. So may the Lord Christ go with you wherever he may send you, guide you through the wilderness and protect you through the storm. May he bring you home rejoicing at the wonders he has shown you. And may he bring you home rejoicing once again to our doors. Amen. Well, thanks for eating lunch together, friends. I think we'll be here again next week, but I hope that this was refreshing and fun. I hope you'll check out more from Hildegard. Watch that movie Vision in German, super cool. And yay, go take a walk. And I love you, and I'll see you soon. Okay, bye. Thanks everybody. Bye, take care.